Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Coffman. This is our 33rd installment in the Torah portion of the week. We're holding by Parshas Bechukosai at the end of the book of Leviticus. And here the Torah starts, beginning in chapter 26, verse 3. If you follow my decrees and observe my commandments, perform them, I'll provide your rains in their time, the land will give its produce, the tree of the field will give its fruit, etc., etc. So, if we do what God wants, then we observe his decrees, you observe his commandments, then God's going to provide rains in your time, and all these good things will happen. And God forbid if we don't do what he wants us to do, there are a series of klolos, a series of curses, that if we don't do what he wants us to do, then we're going to get punished. So Rashi over here, the beginning of the Parsha, when it says, if you go in my ways, that's talking about keeping the mitzvos. Rashi over here says, what does it mean to keep the mitzvahs? It means that you should be an baTorah. Right? It's about ameilus baTorah. What's ameilus baTorah? It means someone who strives very hard and works very hard at learning Torah, at keeping the mitzvahs. Right? It's not enough just to know what to do, but a person, learns tremendously in depth. The mitzvahs, the customs, Musar, books of ethics, and again, it's not enough just to get the simple explanation, but we want to delve into it more. We want to live it more. So this whole idea about going in the Torah's ways is, we'll give an example, is that when we go in God's ways and we do what he wants us to do, it means not only we do as much as we can, we go beyond. We go beyond what we should do. We do everything in our power in order to fulfill whatever we need to fulfill. Now, it's not enough just, I could look up in a book and say, oh, what's the law about this, that, and the other thing? Oh, you look it up, it's right there. 1, 2, 3. So there is a time. Certainly you have to know what to do about certain things. You look it up, black and white, hopefully. It's black and white, that's the law, that's what we do, and that's it. But there are many, many other, other levels. I heard someone speaking about it recently, and he brought down the following idea. A person could learn, and, let's say we learn Rashi over here, right? And Rashi explains, what does it mean to go in God's laws? It means to strive in Torah. It means to work very hard. So we think about it a little bit. Okay, that's what Rashi says. Is there anyone who disagrees? Are there any other sources to look at? The problem is, a lot of times we may hear something, we may look at something, and we take it at face value. We don't sit there and analyze it, evaluate it. It's true, it's not true, how true is it? Does it fit in with this? Does it fit in with that? So, we'll put it a little more graphically. Think about the following statement. Some people think they think, and the rest of the people would rather die than think. Now, you may say, oh, ha ha, very funny. Well, it wasn't meant to be funny. The idea is that we don't maximize our brain power. If we're lucky, maybe we use 10%, maybe even 15%. So when we see something, even if it's written in a Torah book, we take it for granted. We don't sit there and, try and turn it into a pretzel, see if it's true, see if it's not true. It depends what it is. So we have to keep in mind that, if we look at something, and let's say a person looks at a book, and it gives, 7, 8, 9 explanations on this verse. Well, very nice. You look at it, you're learning, you're thinking about it, etc. Many would say that's not learning. Why? Because someone else did the work. And all they did was they put it in a book. They listed X, Y, Z, or A, B, C, whatever the verse is, and what it means, what's it relevant to. They've done all the work. So they might say, well, I don't have the knowledge to do that. So good, so you're getting a base knowledge. No one's saying getting a base knowledge is bad. But is that called being amol baTorah? Is it called digging deep in understanding the vastness of what the Torah says? Someone giving it to you on a silver platter, that's not the same thing. If we looked at the verse, I'll give another example. You look at the verse itself, what would I have thought? Right, we'll see. The Rabbi Chaim, one of the great earlier commentators on the Torah, he brings down more than 40 explanations over here. We're not going to go through all of them. We'll go through a few, see what he highlights. But if we were to look at it ourselves, and many years ago, this is actually how I started to learn, you look at a text, no commentary. Right? What does it mean? What do you think it means? And analyze it. Either based on grammar, based on other things you may know. But even if you don't know that much, when you look at it without commentary, you think, oh, I think it means like this. Or it could mean like that. Or it could be, Webster's 15th definition of what it is. Or whatever the case is. So imagine different scenarios. So now, if we imagine what we would have thought, and then go look into the commentators, and what the commentators say, then we have to come back and say, well, why didn't I come up with that? Or why didn't I see that? Or where did they see that? That's called analysis. Right? So when you analyze something from the outside, you have your way of looking at things. The commentaries have their way of looking at things. Obviously, commentators are closer to the source. So most likely they're going to be more right than you. Most likely, Nonetheless, if we really think into what the verse says or what the text says, and I don't look at any commentary, then when I look at the commentary, it's going to open my eyes. Because then you're going to have to say, why did I say like this? Or why didn't I think like that? If you look at the verse itself, it's interesting. We'll just analyze for a second, and then we'll see what the Orthodox Chaim here says. It says, if I go in the ways doing these ordinances, and keep these commandments, and I guard them, and I do them, God's going to give us rain, and all this. Now, Rashi here learns, or even before we get to Rashi, what would I have thought? A simple, here's where a little bit of Hebrew knowledge comes in handy. The Hebrew says in Bechukosai teileichu. If I go in the ways, now, Bechukosai means that literally, in my ordinances. What's a chok? A chok is a law that we don't understand. Meaning, the idea of a chok is like the red heifer. What's the red heifer? The red heifer was a cow that was totally red, was never worked. They burn the cow up, and they use the ashes and the Kohen used the ashes to sprinkle on someone who became impure. Now, the person who was impure becomes pure, but the Kohen who sprinkles the ashes, he himself becomes impure at the same time. Now, that is a contradiction in terms. My language, a lot of sense it doesn't make. How can someone make someone pure and he himself become impure at the same time? Doesn't make any sense. So, the first thing we'd have to analyze is, why did the Torah use that language? It uses the word chok, and it uses the word mitzvos. Mitzvos are things I understand. Right? Don't steal. Don't kill. Like these things I can understand. Right? Doesn't mean what I think the reason of not to kill is that's the reason the Torah gave. Could be a million reasons the Torah gave, but it's something I understand. So you have things I don't understand, and you have things that I do understand. Right? And the things that I don't understand, then what is the connection? What is the connection to Torah? I don't understand it, but I still have to keep it. So now, with that bit of introduction, Rashi says, I might think it's only talking about keeping the mitzvahs. Right? It says keep the mitzvahs. And that's what it seems simple explanation is. The Rashi says, but it says keep the mitzvahs and uses another word. What's the other word? Bechukosai. It says keep the mitzvahs I don't understand. The ones I do understand for sure I have to keep. The ones I don't understand, I also have an obligation to keep. Rashi doesn't say that. Rashi says, why does it say the word chok over here? In order to teach you that we have to learn to the depth of the Torah as much as we can. Right? We have to be what we call ameilus baTorah. Why does Rashi say that? Because what could the Torah have said? The Torah could have said, im. It says, im bechukosai teileichu. It could have said, im bechukosai telamdu. If I go in these laws, I should learn them. Not that I should go in them, but I should learn them. Torah doesn't say that. So therefore it means to do them. That's how Rashi's learning, seemingly. Comes on Orach Chaim. So before we get to Orach Chaim, one more prelude. So here Rashi's commenting on why to use that language. Rather, if we were thinking and we knew a little bit of Hebrew, and we say, oh, it says chok over here, and it says mitzvahs. So I would have said, why mention both? Just say, I have an obligation to do mitzvahs. If I do the mitzvahs, so good. Then God will give us what we need. Give us rain, other things. But the Torah doesn't say that. The Torah uses both things of mitzvahs, both words. It says chok, mitzvah I don't understand, and it says mitzvahs I do understand. Comes along the Orach Chaim. Now the Orach Chaim also, he explained a lot of things here. Right, we're going to go through a few of them. One of the things he says is, and we should have asked this as well, the Torah uses the word chok, right back to that word, uses the word chok. Now, Rashi explained, when it says chok over here, it means to be ameilus baTorah, to learn to as much depth as you can in learning Torah. Don't rely on cliff notes. Don't rely on what someone brings down, 10 different explanations. You didn't do it yourself. You go look them up. Right? You go into the depths of learning Torah. The question, though, is, one of the questions Orach Chaim asks, if you want to tell me about learning depth in Torah, and I have to dig each thing up and try and figure out what it says and why does he use the word chok? What's the point of using the word chok to say I have to delve deeply into something that doesn't make any logical sense? Right? You take these ashes that make somebody pure, and the person who makes them pure becomes impure. Oh, that doesn't make any logical sense. Right? I can stand on here, I can stand on my head till the blood flows out and I pass out. It's not something I'm going to understand. I mean, I have to work to the best of my ability to try and understand it. But the reality is it's something we don't understand. So if it's something I don't understand, how can I plumb to the depths and try to understand it? Doesn't make sense. It's illogical. Comes on the Orach Chaim and says, you know what it means? It means that even if you've learned something once, you've learned it twice, you've learned it 3 times, you already know it, you know it like the back of your hand. Hey, how's that spark right there? Anyway, you know it like the back of your hand. If you know it like the back of your hand, why do you have to go over it again? I already learned it, and I know it very well. Comes on Orach Chaim, and he says, the purpose of learning Torah over and over and over again, what's the purpose? Is that you should love learning. You should love learning. It should be a part of you. It should be special to you. And you should learn it so many times. Not once, not twice, not 3 times. Right? You learn it 100 times, 1,000 times. But you should also learn it so you don't forget. So then the Orach Chaim says, why does it say in the plural? Why does it say Vim Bechukosai? It's plural. It should have said Im Bechok, singular. Why does it mention the plural? Comes on the Orach Chaim. Orach Chaim said, the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says, it's a hint over here to two Torahs. That there were two Torahs given on Mount Sinai. There was Torah Shebechsav, written Torah, and there's Torah Sheba'al Peh. What's Torah Sheba'al Peh? Oral tradition. So, what is oral tradition? Oral tradition is a running commentary on the Torah. Without an oral tradition, we don't understand what the Torah says. Right? You explain what totafot are. That we say, oh, they're tefillin or phylacteries. We don't know what totafot are, it's even in a foreign language, as Rashi points out. Torah says, sit in a sukkah, and on sukkahs bring a pre-ate hadar, a nice smelling fruit. You think it's a quince, he thinks it's a pomegranate. No one's going to think it's an etrog. Or what I call in the vernacular a lemon on steroids. We don't know what it is. But if you don't bring it, then you nullify the mitzvah. So how do I know what to bring? How do I know what a sukkah looks like? Because we have an oral tradition. Now, because the oral tradition wasn't written down, does not mean that, it was done much later. It was there, already at Mount Sinai. All the ideas were already there. It only got written down much later. Why did it get written down? Because the rabbis were afraid it was going to get lost, and they were right. Because when the Jews got thrown out of Israel, and they got dispersed, they had good reason to be worried. So they allowed it to be written down, otherwise totally would have been forgotten. So and not only that, but oral tradition, literally was really supposed to be passed down that way, orally. And then, it would have got passed down generation to generation. So, without an oral tradition, we would have no idea what to do, what to keep, how to do it, when to do it. The Torah is very obscure in different ways. It'll tell you certain things, but it doesn't give you all the information. It gives you very little. Right? For example, the Torah says don't kill. Well, if someone comes to kill me, they're trying to kill me, and I stop them, and the only way I can stop them is by killing them. If I don't know anything else, I would say I'm liable. Why? Torah says don't kill. Doesn't matter if you're defending yourself, you're not allowed to kill. You'll be liable. So if I didn't know any other information, that's what I might conclude. So I'll give you a little bit of information. So the oral tradition tells us, someone comes to kill you, you can stop them. Obviously you don't have to die. If you can stop them in a way where you don't have to kill them, then you should. If not, the only way to stop them is to kill them. You're totally not liable. Why? They're coming to kill you, you kill them first. Right? Who's to say your blood is any redder than his? I have to give up my life because he wants to kill me? No. Again, it's better not to kill him if you don't have to. But if you have to, then you're not liable. So you need that running commentary. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to make heads or tails out of what the Torah says at all. Another aspect, says the Orach Chaim, another aspect of learning Torah in depth, the Orach Chaim says that a person, as we mentioned, has to keep the mitzvos. So, there are two ways. A person can learn for himself, and he can teach others. So the Torah says, Book of Deuteronomy, chapter 11, verse 19, it says you should teach them to your children. It says, "V'madatem oisam es benechem v'shinantam livanecha." Teach them to your children. V'dibartabam, speak of them. So that's why Rabbi Chaim says that it says V'im Bechukosai uses the word chok in the plural. Why in the plural? It means you have an obligation to learn because you have to know what to do. But you also can teach others, right? You can learn, you can teach, you can guard, you can do. So it's in a language. It's in plural because there are many different aspects over here. He says further, it says in Bechukosai teileichu. Teileichu means to go on the way. Why does it use that language? Orthodox Chaim says in order to teach you that a person should even learn Torah when he's going on the way. Because it says in the Shema, it says balechtecha v'derech. Right? You should go in its ways. You should learn Torah even when you're going somewhere. So if a person, is on his way to work, let's say, and he's driving or he's taking the train or bus or whatever, so you should be thinking in Torah. Right? Put away those newspapers, or even better, put away your phone. Or if you have a phone, you have your iPhone or whatever. So hook into a Torah class. Listen as you're going along, right? Wherever you're going. That way, whatever you're doing, your mind is thinking in Torah. Again, at work, a little bit hard to do that. Right? You can't be listening and working at the same time. I mean, some people can, most people can't, depending on what you're doing. Nonetheless, so the Orthodox Chaim says, when I'm going on the way means that I should be thinking in Torah. I can listen to a class, right? Put on my iPhone, put on my MP3, right? Download a whole bunch of things. Plenty of Torah classes to listen to. I mean, I got plenty. You can listen to me. I don't know if you want to, but in theory, you could do that. Plenty what to listen to while you're, stuck in traffic on the train or whatever the case is. That means your mind is always constantly thinking in Torah. So that's what it means if I go in its ways. As I'm going along, I'm walking along. So if I have the ability to learn while I'm walking along, so that's good. Also fulfills what the Shema says. Right? It says, balechtecha v'derech. I think in Torah when I go on the way. I speak to my kids when I speak to them in Torah. How do they see Torah? Either because I speak that way, or because they see how the parents are. Because the parents are the role models for children. So Torah is all encompassing. I do it when I get up in the morning. I do it before I go to sleep. But I have to fix time to learn. So we can have free time. If we do have free time, so that free time allows us to learn. So I know a number of people that during their lunch break, that's what they do. They're eating lunch or, doing other things, but they're listening to Torah or, they learn with someone, during that time. So you might say on the one hand, wow, isn't there any downtime? So yeah, a person's too tired, he can't think. His head is pounding. So I'll tell you what, the Musar, people of ethics, great rabbinical authorities that were very big in ethics, what did they say? They said, if a person's too tired their brain is too tired to think, in depth, learn something lighter. You say, come on, at least let my brain rest. Yeah, that's a good way to let it rest. Not always feasible. We'll say that. It's not always feasible. But even so, there are levels to reach. Point over here is, I can have Torah encompass my whole life. Okay, so I have to work. Right? I have to put bread on the table. But when I'm not working or I have a break or whatever, what should I do? So says the Orthodox Chaim, when I go on the way, and I'm going from place to place, if I have an opportunity, I should learn Torah. That shows Torah is important. That shows I have a connection to it. Because every second I'm trying to think in Torah. I live in this world, I have to provide for my family. Okay. But when I'm not doing that and I have a break, that's what I should be doing. That's one aspect of striving in Torah. Comes along the Orthodox Chaim. The Orthodox Chaim here says the following: that David HaMelech, he brings down a medrash. That David HaMelech, King David himself, always wanted to dwell in God's palace. Right? He said, leave everything alone, let me just sit and learn. That's what I want to do. I just want to sit and learn. Obviously, we know David HaMelech had a difficult life, right? Constantly running for his life, and other things being the king. Nonetheless, he said, let my legs run to the base medrash, to the study hall. He says, all I desire is to be able to sit and learn. Then why does it say, Bechukosai teileichu? Why does it say, in his ways I should go, his laws I should keep and go? It means, it's as if they take them from himself, and I go after them. He runs after them. Well, what does it mean over here? It means that he has such a desire to do God's will on a regular basis. So what does he want to do? He wants to fulfill it at the highest level. By fulfilling it at the highest level, how is he going to do that? He's got to learn. He's got to go to the study hall. Got to open the books. Got to see what the Torah means. Has to learn it in depth. Has to learn it with the bread and with fire. Not enough to just know what it says. Has to go beyond. What's the message? What am I supposed to take out of this? How is it supposed to change my life? It's a little bit easier. We learn there are homiletic passages in the Talmud. The homiletic passages are stories that we learn. And that this rabbi did this or did that or whatever the case is. But they are all very nice stories. But usually these stories are very in-depth. There's a lot there. There's an old joke. You could learn it in 5 minutes or 5 years. The language is usually difficult. And the idea is that it has to be studied more in depth. But most people just sort of learn it very quickly and they move on. But they're homiletic lessons. So the obvious question when we look at something like that is, what is it here to teach me? What am I supposed to gain out of it? I mean, simply, when we go through these type of things, we say, what does this mean in general? A little bit harder language to go through. A little bit more difficult to fathom just what it means. Simply, Simple explanation. Forget Kabbalah, forget anything else. What do the words mean? Okay, I get these words, figure out what it means, figure out the context. Great. Now the question is, what does it really mean? You ever hear someone say, I know what it means, but what does it mean? Right? I do that. I know what it means, but what does it mean? So simple explanation is, I see the context. I see what's trying to be said. So now you have to take it a step further. The step further is, what about me? I'm here now 3,000 years later, looking at this text, seeing the depth behind it. What does it mean for me? How does it apply? Does it apply? Heard a great rabbi once say that his Rebbe, when he would learn those types of Gemara, what we would call Agadata, right? Stories, homiletic stories, he would always say, learn it like you learn anything else. In other words, if you're learning, you're learning about, your ox gores my ox, and it falls into a pit and it breaks its leg, what am I liable for? Am I liable for damage? Am I liable for healing it? Am I liable, for other things? Right? You dig to the depth of what's in front of you. This applies, doesn't apply, how does it apply? What do the commentaries say? How do we look at it? So he said you look at something homiletic, it's even harder. Right? But he said that you have to learn it like you learn anything else. You have to dissect it. What's the purpose of it being here? How does it relate to what we just said? Is there a connection? What's going on behind the scenes? And a lot of what ameilus baTorah, of in-depth learning, whatever we're learning, the depthness is what's behind it. What's behind what's being said. Not just to know what's being said, not just to know which side disagrees and why they disagree, but what's the essence of their disagreement? Maybe in theory they agree, but on a subtle point they disagree, which changes the whole thing. I saw something recently where there was an argument back and forth, and at the end, one of the commentators said, what are they really arguing about? In this case, they would agree. In that case, they would agree. But in a certain subtlety, they disagree. And because of this subtlety, it changed the whole thing. Changed the whole perspective. So anything in Judaism, that we analyze, that we look at, we try and understand, to the best of our ability. We're trying to make it practical. See, this is where people have difficulty. People will say the laws are old. They were living in an agricultural society. We don't live in an agricultural society today. We live in an industrial society. True. So some of these things don't apply. That may be true. It depends what. But it doesn't matter. We still have to keep it even if we live in a totally different generation. The Torah is for all generations. It's not just for the one that got it at Mount Sinai and a few generations later. So the reality is, I have to live it in this day and age. So to the best of my ability, I have to understand for sure what I have to do. What I'm obligated in doing. So we do things every day. We don't necessarily delve into the depths. of what we do. But I would venture to guess that if we would delve into things more and try and understand things more, they would have more meaning. You know, if we think about, let's say, the holiday of Shavuos is coming up, and people are busy figuring out great recipes for cheesecake and other dairy things, you know, you almost forget what the purpose of the holiday is, you know, which is the giving of the Torah. And we stay up all night to show how important the Torah is. Because our ancestors were sleeping, God had to wake them up by Mount Sinai, so according to the Rizal, according to Kabbalah, we're going to stay up all night to fix that. So when we delve into what Matan Torah is, what the giving of the Torah represents, and we go through the book of Ruth, and we see the connection, why we read it, you know, on Shavuos Day, that's a whole different thing. Now, let's come to commemorate the giving of the Torah. Who cares? Doesn't mean anything. But here, if you're delving in, you know, and you're digging and digging and digging and getting, you know, more explanations and gaining more knowledge, that's what it's talking about. Because that the person has a desire. He runs towards it. Like David HaMelech over here. He runs towards the base medrash, towards the study hall. Why? He does because he has tremendous desire to learn. David HaMelech was a great person, knew tremendous amounts of Torah. Can't even imagine who he was. All he desired was to learn more. All he desired was to go more in depth in order to get closer to God. Because the more we delve in depth, isn't that going to result in us being closer to Him? Because we understand more. We bring it to another level. By doing so, not only expands the mind, you know, which isn't a bad thing, but it gets us to other levels. So one level is we understand what it says. Right? We basically understand the words, basically understand what the concepts are. And that's one level. Another level is, all right, let's take a step back. You know, what's really going on here? You know, imagine God spoke to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, thunder, lightning, terrifying experience. So you're saying I should go outside in an electrical storm to get the feeling? No. But if we imagine the enormousness of these, of what occurred, and we plunge the depths of what other great people say and put together, paint us a picture. So it's not just, I know what to do, because I do need to know what to do when it comes to keeping the Torah. But it's a whole different thing when I understand it much more. When I have that much more of a connection, when I want to plumb to the depths of what it is. And isn't it true that, let's say there was something that really caught our eye, and we decided we want to look into more detail. Oh, we look at this, we look at that, we look at another thing. We could spend days going through certain things. isn't something that's special to our heart. The more depth we look into it, doesn't it mean it's going to be that much more special? Doesn't it mean we're going to acquire it in a different way than we would something else? Of course. Why? Because your heart is palpitating towards that. You can't sleep until you get this resolved. You want to know why one says like this and the other one doesn't. You want to get to the depth of what's going on. So the more you spend on it, the more in depth you go, you definitely should have more meaning. It should definitely hit home much more. And then years later, because you went so in depth, that's not something you're going to forget. Doesn't mean you don't have to go over it, but if it's something like that, you were interested in the topic, so you read everything there is about the topic, within reason, so that thing's going to be much more special to your heart. Why? Because you had a much greater desire to learn it. Because you had a much greater desire to learn it, it stays with you much more. So the reality is, all of Torah should be that way. I mean, you can only spread yourself so thin, right? If you spend, all your days in depth on a few things, you're never going to know anything. Because you won't cover any ground. At the same time, if you learn things very quickly and you want to cover ground, you'll never understand anything. So you need a mixture of both. You need to learn in depth, you need to cover ground at the same time. I mean, there are levels of learning in depth. I could understand things. Someone, writes down all the, about a certain thing. And it brings down 8, 9 different explanations. I'm not saying you won't get anything out of it. You'll definitely get something out of it. But imagine if you broke your teeth going through them. And then you understood it. You would get more out of it. Much more. It's according to how much effort we put in. And Torah's hard. Makes you weak. Takes a lot of brain power to figure out what's going on. The Rabbi Chaim over here wrote more than 40 explanations of this verse. You don't see that anywhere else. He explains things in depth, some things according to Kabbalah. He's never this wordy. Usually. I mean, he can be wordy, not this wordy. So he says it's an incredible thing over here. There's what to be said for learning Torah in depth. But he also says it has to come with desire. You have to want it. You have to want to learn it. And by learning it, you get so caught up in learning it that hopefully you'll be able to give it over to others. But see, in order to give over to others, your learning has to be clear. And it has to be on the tip of your fingers like this. So a person, in order to see if they truly understand what's being said, say it over to someone else. And see if you can give that over to someone else and how it comes out. Then you'll see if you know it or not. But see, it's not just enough to know it. The Rabbi Chaim says. The Rabbi Chaim says, even if you know it once, twice, 3 times, right? You may know it clear. Not enough. You have to learn it with such love, with such desire, that you have to keep learning and learning and learning. And that's what Torah is. That you learn and learn and learn to make sure you do not forget. And if you don't do that, and you don't continually learn and review, you'll forget. And if you forget, it could cost you. And the reason it could cost you because then I'm not doing what I should be. And I'm lax. And it's just a spiral effect. It says Rabbi Chaim, how do you stay fresh? How do you continue to try and reach much higher spiritual levels and keep growing and growing and growing? He says one way is in Bechukosai teileichu. You take it with you. You go with it on the way. You learn on the way. You're surrounded by it. You know, you're stuck in traffic. You know you have a certain amount of time it's going to take you to get to work or whatever. You don't have to listen to the news. News ain't going anywhere. You can listen to Torah. Listen to something that's inspirational. Right? It can certainly be boring in traffic. So at least be inspired. You know, you get time during work. You know, you get a break. Same thing. That means that you're going. That the Torah is with you. It's going. With you at all times. Right? Obviously, there are times you can't listen to Torah. Fine. But the times that you're free, shows your desire. It shows how much that you want to learn and not waste time. See, we waste plenty of time. You know, imagine there were great people, you know, that wore shoes that they didn't have to tie. So it would save them extra time getting dressed so they could, you know, do what they needed to do for the sake of heaven. Well, we don't think in those terms. You know, we still think we're going to live here forever, so I got more time. But we waste a lot of time. So here the Orthodox Chaim says, no. You know, as much as you can, you have to dig the depths of Torah. Right? We make the blessing in the morning that everyone makes, or every Jew makes, man or woman. We make the blessing, La'asok b'divrei Torah. That we should, doesn't say learn Torah, doesn't say lilmod Torah. It says La'asok. What's La'asok? The root of the word is asik, like a business. Torah has to be to you like a business. Imagine if we would learn Torah to the extent, you know, of some businessman who's busy, you know, making millions and figuring out ways to make more and more and more. Right? He's just attached to money. So he does whatever he can, day and night. You know, he's thinking of different ways to make more money and more and more. And he's not resting. No, he's not taking it easy because he wants to be number one. He wants to make the most. So to him, what he's doing for money, or for the sake of money, that's what we should do in learning Torah. If we would learn Torah like a businessman makes money, or tries to make money, doesn't have time for stupid things. He's too busy making sure the factory's running. He's too busy making sure the workers are there. And doing what needs to be done in order for him to make money. Doesn't sleep. Right? He sleeps however much he needs to sleep, but that's his main focus. Day and night, that's his focus. Can we say that day and night, that's our focus of Torah? Of learning Torah? Hopefully we can. But imagine if we lived our lives learning Torah, keeping Torah, like the way a businessman runs after money. And to keep his money and to make more money. If we would do that, to the extent that a businessman does, we'd all look different. The problem is we get distracted. And unfortunately, in this world, there's a lot of distraction. Best thing we have to do is push away the distraction, maximize. Maximizing learning Torah and keeping it, just like the businessman maximizes all his time in order to make money. I also want to remind people that I have a class on Introduction to Kabbalah based on the book Derech Hashem. We're now discussing about where the soul goes after death, and about man's purpose in the world and how the world's set up. And we're going to have a webinar next week about reincarnation, a free webinar, so take a look for that. I also give conversion classes. Anyone interested, take a look at my blog, at my Facebook fan page, Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism. Take a look at my blog at orthodoxconversion.com. And anyone wants to contact me can contact me at Rabbi Chaim Coffman at gmail.com. RABBIChaimCoffman at gmail.com. I want to wish everyone a great Shabbos.